Hello? How have you been? How's your mum? Welcome back to another episode of Neanderthal Makes It All, or as I like to call it, where good intentions go to die in paint fumes. Today we're diving headfirst into one of my favourite sadistic little universes, the salt-encrusted, fish-choked nightmare that is H.P. Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth. Lovecraft didn't just invent monsters. He invented the slow, soul-crushing dread of realizing the universe is utterly indifferent, and maybe a bit moist. Shadow over Innsmouth takes place, not surprisingly, in a small town called Innsmouth. It's a fishing town in Massachusetts, and the book takes place at the end of the 1920s. I'll get into it a little bit later, but the crux of it is the townsfolk of Innsmouth are all slowly turning into fish. Or fishmen, rather. And women. Women can be fish too. 2025. So what am I doing? I'm sculpting one of these poor fishy souls. Expect squishy textures and questionable anatomy. And hopefully we won't summon a fish god. Although we might. So grab yourselves a cup of coffee, or a stiff drink, or maybe a Ribena. I don't know how old you are. And let's make something ugly together, shall we? So who is H.P. Lovecraft? If you're looking at this video, you probably already know, but for those of you who don't, H.P. Lovecraft was a writer who basically looked at the world and shrugged and said, yeah, everything's awful and unknowable, let's write about that. He had a lifelong obsession with the idea that the universe is enormous, uncaring, and way too complicated for our tiny human brains. So he invented cosmic horror by being the guy who stares into the void and then writes a 30-page short story about how the void stares back with too many eyes. One of Lovecraft's biggest fears was the unknown. Anything too big, too old, or too strange for humans to understand. And if you think about it, nothing fits that description better than the ocean. It's dark, it's deep, and it's full of creatures that make your eyes water. So Lovecraft incorporates sea life into his stories because the ocean is already nightmare fuel enough. Most of the creatures, or monsters, or gods in H.P. Lovecraft books are said to be totally indescribable. No mortal man could describe what these creatures look like. But then he goes on to describe them for about 10 pages. The deep ones of Innsmouth are basically the logical conclusion to his ocean fears. Slimy, ancient, immortal, and very much not interested in human comfort or boundaries. To Lovecraft, the ocean symbolized that feeling that humans are not in control at all. It's huge, ancient, and absolutely does not care about you. And that's exactly the kind of vibe he wanted. Cosmic dread with a side of salt water. So he took his fear of the unknown, dunked it in the ocean, added some tentacles, and boom, literary career. He also had some questionable opinions. But don't judge, so does your nan. So why am I sculpting this? Some of you might know that about every 4 or 5 videos I do a little bit of a palette cleanser. Most of my videos are about my own world that I'm building, and it's just good to mix things up every now and then. I mean, deep down, who really doesn't want to make a fish man? You're watching this video, so you at least want to watch me do it. When it comes to the design of this guy, I had a few influences. Obviously the book. The residents of Innsmouth are often described going through different stages of transformation as they get older, and the older you are, the more fish-like you become. So I wanted this guy to be sort of just on the turn. If you were to bump into him, I'd want it to be one of those moments where you make eye contact, and then you don't want to appear like you're staring, so you look away, but then you don't want to be seen looking away, so you look at them again, and then it just gets very awkward, and you sort of shuffle off, feeling like a terrible person, because you are one. But if you did bump into him, I wouldn't want you to think, oh fuck, Fishman. More like he's just a little inbred. Apparently today's youth would call him chopped. I just call him fuck ugly. You might have seen some of the reference I was using at the start of the video. I get a lot of my reference from a portrait photographer on Instagram called Earth's World. I'll try and remember to link him in the bio. But if you're looking for reference for interesting faces, that's the place to go. I do like an interesting face. Hatchet face would be the term most people would use for the kind of faces that I like. I was in Lidl once, seeing if they had any spare plastic bags I could wrap around my head. And there was a guy in there with the most amazing face. I must have followed him around for about 15 minutes. Imagine a cross between John Cena and that unique looking man from, what was it called? The Hills Have Eyes, the original Hills Have Eyes. He was also in Guyver, and I think he was in one of the Star Treks. He's the one with the big bug eyes and the sort of the pointy bald head. But anyway, my crippling social anxiety stopped me from asking for a photo. But then about a year later, I got a second chance for a photo. I saw him in A&E. I walked up to him to ask for a picture, but then I thought, he's in A&E. He's not having the best day anyway. He doesn't need me asking a photo because he reminds me of fucking Frankenstein. So I bottled it again. But I did overhear his name. His name's Lee. So if you're out there, Lee, and you fancy sending me a picture, I'd be really grateful. Hopefully you'll find the humour in the fact that I think you look like a person made out of several dead bodies. Well, I've totally lost track of what I was talking about there. What are we doing now? Clothes! Yes, clothes. I went through a couple of ideas for an outfit, but I settled on the classic big, thick, woolly jumper that a docker would wear. I've stretched the neck out on it though because I like the idea that he's spending more and more time in the ocean, and every time he gets out his jumper's really heavy and it gets all stretched, and plus it lets me show some of that detail in his neck. Originally this fella was going to be smoking a pipe, but then I thought he wouldn't have any use for that sort of thing anymore. So I imagine a scenario where you're walking on a dark alley and you see this figure shambling towards you, and at first glance he's smoking a pipe. But if you look closely, you can see he's got this massive, thick fish hook just dangling out of his lip. But he's totally unaware of it. He can't even feel it, because his human mind's almost totally slipped away. Like Bruce Willis. These are just some fine details on the hat that no one will notice but me. I ummed and ahed a lot about the back of the bust. First I was going to do something really complicated. It was all going to be tentacles and eyeballs and mouths, etc. But I thought it would take away from the face. I considered just a plain flat back, but I knew I wanted some sort of reference to that universe in there somewhere. So I sort of compromised with myself, and I've gone for quite a Geiger-esque back. But I'm going to paint it really dark black, I think. So, you got to get in close to appreciate it. This is that reference to the universe I was talking about. This is Cthulhu. We know who he is. He's not actually in the book. I think the god they all worship in the book is Dagon, who's more like an eel in appearance, not an octopus. But I didn't think he was recognisable enough, so I went for Cthulhu in the end. I really like doing this Lovecraft stuff. I'm considering doing some things from his other books, or maybe a few more of these fish people busts. Maybe do a set of 4 or something. If that's something you'd like to see, let me know. And yeah, that's it when it comes to sculpting. Now, through the wonders of modern technology, I'm going to print this thing off. Here he is. I went for kryptonite again. I've tried a new primer this time round, Rain Matter Beige. I really liked the colour, but the consistency was a bit strange. It was quite powdery. Now, I think I've said in every one of my videos that I'm not very good at painting, but I've done a lot of research this time round, and I decided I was going to experiment with some oils. I normally use Vallejo or Citadel paints, but I can never get the level of translucency that I like, and they dry too quickly, so I can't blend them together the way I want. But these oils are great. You can thin them right down to nothing with white spirit. I know some people have issues with oils taking days to go off, but I thin them down so much that you've only got to blast them with a hairdryer and then give it a quick coat with some clear lacquer or something to seal it in, and it's fine. Literally, you can go over the top of it in a couple of minutes if you want. Well, I mustered the courage to use the airbrush again. Was it a mistake? Yes. Did I learn? No. God damn, God damn, God damn. This is a cool little technique. I did a little bit of reading on what colours traditional portrait painters use. And they use a tealy blue-grey around the mouth, around the neck and the chin. I go quite heavy with the colours in this. They're probably heavier to you than they are to me because of my special needs eyes. But I did want a lot of colour in this one. I like the idea that this transformation was quite painful and there was a lot of bruising involved and sort of cracked bones under the skin. So I've thrown in some yellows and purples as well. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. The back of his head's quite textured, so I wanted to draw a little bit of attention to that. So I've gone over it with a few oil washes. I wanted like a cold grey, grim, oceany colour, trying to add more fish elements. I liked where that was going, so I decided to give him some grey-blue lips. Very kissable. We've all thought about what colour the inside of a fishman's mouth would be. I've gone for dark, inky colours. I like the idea that he's just been eating raw squid all the time and it's sort of stained the inside of his mouth. For the teeth, I just went with a normal bone white. And then I rotted them up with some, I think it's called Agrax Earth, I still can't remember the name. I've never painted a human eye before. I always lose my bottle. But the whole point in this channel is about me learning and trying new things, so it'd be silly not to give it a go. Oh, and there is a reason why he has a big hole in each eye, but I'll show you that a bit later on. I'm trying to get a dead silvery fisheye effect. Also, I want there to be a blind, ignorant cataract sort of look, like a vacancy. His jumper was nearly white, but I ended up going for grey because it was a bit grimmer. I didn't realise at the time that I'd used the same grey on his lip, so now his lipstick matches his jumper. I didn't imagine he'd be so fashion conscious. And then finally on the jumper I gave it a browny greeny wash, again trying to make it look like this guy's dragged himself out the sea. Annoyingly, after all that painting was done, I noticed his hat didn't fit his head quite right. So I'm just using a little bit of milliput to fill the gap. For the hat, I laid on a bunch of different browns from dark to light. I stippled them on with a sponge. I'm still trying to get that mortal dirty look. Came out quite well, actually. It looks like an old suede or a waxed leather, something like that. And here I'm just making that hook look a bit more metallic. Can you hear that rain outside? I do all this in my tiny garden shed. Be lucky if I don't get washed away at this point. And here we go, secrets revealed. Why did I leave giant holes in his eyes? It's so I can put these little lenses in. I printed them separately, but if we're lucky, they should pop in perfectly. Look at that. Now to bring those to life a little bit more, I'm going to add some UV resin to make them a bit clearer. How good does that look? This was all a bit of an experiment really, but it worked out quite well. I'm gonna keep using it, I think. There's lots of things I can do with this, not just eyes. I used a bit more UV resin to get that mouth nice and birdie. Black. I did a light dry brushing of some gold over that Cthulhu sigil, glyph, stamp. I'm not sure what you call it. Also, can you see that big 3D print line at the top? I don't care, that doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. I don't care. This was missing something, so I thought it'd be cool if I painted a couple of big sloppy bird shits on him. Bit of a side rant, but when was the last time you saw somebody with bird shit on them? I mean, growing up in school and stuff, somebody always had a big lump of bird shit on them. You just don't see it anymore. Is it like bees? Is it the same thing as bees? Are we running out of birds? I mean, it's not a bad thing. I just feel like it's sort of a Mandela effect where I've slipped into another world where people don't get peppered with bird shit daily. Right, we're nearing the end. This stump is going to be my base. I was going to make it myself, but I decided to have a little walk around the back lot on the show I'm working on, or I was working on at the time. And I found a bunch of old beams, so I chopped the top off one of them. I also found this bit of old rope. Some people pay money for that. But I thought rather than try and recreate this, might as well just use the real thing. I'm never going to match this paint job. And there you go. One more blob of super glue and we are done. The glamour shots are coming up next. I call them money shots, but I don't make any money. Before I go, I'm just going to mention that this channel's probably going to have a bit of a rebranding in the next video. Neanderthal makes it all doesn't really roll off the tongue. And it's a bull-faced lie, I don't make it all. I hardly make anything, to be honest. I think this is my 5th video. Neanderthal makes 5 things doesn't sound much better. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy the new look. Well, I've talked enough now. Bye!